The unavoidable condition of human existence is suffering. To live is to suffer. From the moment Adam and Eve were expelled from the paradise of Genesis for the original sin of tasting the forbidden fruit from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, humanity has been cursed to labour within the harsh and unforgiving environment of the capricious wilderness. Not only does the human constitution have to courageously tolerate the destructive and truly calamitous inevitabilities of natural disaster, destructive weather, poverty, plague, the threat of famine, and terrible diseases like cancer, there is something else added to the hand that has already been irrevocably stacked against us. That is, humanity's innate proclivity for genuine malevolence, for cold-blooded heartlessness, for conscious, perpetual evil. Not only are we blighted by the existential hardships of our environment, of merely being, but in addition, we must contend with man's evil towards man. We are hammered left and right by the perils of simply existing, as well as beset by our potentially chaotic, pathological natures. Looking at the 20th century alone, it isn't difficult at all to empathise with the opines of misanthropy. All said, the 20th century was hell, literally, manifest on earth. As a result of the horrors personally experienced during his time spent as a prisoner in the Soviet gulags, where human beings were literally worked to death, the great Russian novelist Alexander Solzhenitsyn famously wrote, "The line dividing good and evil cuts through the heart of every human being, and who is willing to destroy a piece of his own heart?" While political prisoners and ordinary criminals were being persecuted and murdered in their millions throughout the vast archipelago system of the communist forced labour camps, millions of Jews were being simultaneously slaughtered, executed in production line droves of biblical proportions under the fascist regime of Hitler's Nazi ideology. History, the part of our existence which took place outside the gate of the previously enjoyed comfort of Eden, has blighted our species with suffering, both as a result of our environment, but more spitefully as a result of man's innate appetite for malevolence, evil, and conscious, willful destruction. Each of us harbours the shadow of chaos. It sits just beneath the skin. It's the reason naive young American men were so easily coerced into the barbarism of rape and murder of innocent civilians during the Vietnam War, little over 40 years ago to this day. It is the dark side we choose not to acknowledge, but it is there. We are all capable of horror, of committing terrible deeds, of inflicting suffering for suffering's sake. That is the repugnant, diabolical shadow aspect of our personality, which is merely controlled. Merely. Carl Jung, the famous Swiss psychoanalyst extraordinaire, declared that the world hangs by a thin thread, which is the psyche of man. The psyche, Jung concluded, was the architect of destruction. With this reasoning, the continued existence of all life, of the earth itself, is completely dependent on the collective psychological health of our species. It all depends entirely on the stability and improvement of the individual psyche, which constantly hinges on the extremes of benevolence and psychopathy. Man's propensity for corruptibility of reason threatens the very foundation of the psychological structure. Its potential integrity as a beacon of morality is endangered the moment that we begin to capitulate to the requirements of deranged values, beliefs, and ideologues. We can forgive the natural world and all its potential destructiveness and pestilence because nature operates within the immutable laws of existence. It doesn't consciously mean us harm. But to tolerate evil in any of its manifestations, be it political, ideological, or personal, is the epitome of corrupted faculty and the height of human irrationality. That disregard for the sanctity of human life cannot be tolerated. In the words of Balthasar Gracian, never open the door to a lesser evil, for other and greater ones invariably slink in after it. Albert Einstein observed that evil is given time enough to flourish when good people stand idly by and do nothing about its presence in the world. Upon expulsion from paradise, evicted by the Father of creation from a world of comfort and pleasure into one of suffering and misery, throughout history, humankind has experienced what it is to toil, to weep, to fall sick and to die, to be destroyed by nature, to be tormented by fellow man, to suffer. Perhaps suffering and evil are requisite educational conditions, lingering in our midst to impress upon us how to better treat one another, a constant and bloody reminder that our internal hierarchical structure of value should always place truth and meaning at its pinnacle, as the standard bearer, as the torch of reason. It is a common and frequent occurrence that a mother, abused as a child, resolves to be a better mother to her child than her mother was to her. Through her own suffering, she was shown a version of the mother that she would never want to become. Through her unfortunate and terrible experiences as a child, she comes to understand firsthand how destructive that evil was and how much better it is to love and to be loved. As a result of her mother's abuse, she becomes a great mother, a better person. As John Keats wrote, "Do you not see how necessary a world of pains and troubles is to school an intelligence and make it a soul?" In general, the harsh reality is that life is a perpetual drama of pain, where genuine happiness is an infrequent occurrence. But perhaps that's the point. And if we are to heed the ancient words of Christ, that God's kingdom, heaven, will eventually manifest upon the earth, maybe it is our charge to create it, to bring its existence into being, to build it brick by agonizing brick. And what better way to understand the true virtue of goodness than to experience for a lifetime how awful evil is, to breathe it, to have it live within our bones. An unruly guest can only be tolerated for so long before, by virtue of their presence as a malevolent antagonist, they are ejected from the party, either peaceably or by any other means necessary to regaining the previously enjoyed harmony of cooperative tranquility. Engineering a culture with little to no thought of meaning, of value, of past transgressions and atrocities committed throughout history, perpetuated by a collective pathology of pure shadow foolishness, is seeking to once again manifest hell on earth. Beginning work on our own souls is to set the cornerstones in place. Thanks for watching.